A shocking truth is about to burst wide open about the man who turned old houses into national treasures. For months, fans have watched closely, wondering if the face they've trusted for years is about to walk away for good. Kevin O'Connor has stayed silent as the rumors grew louder. But now, at last, he's ready to share what really happened. And the story begins with a moment no one expected. For a long time, Kevin O'Connor's future on this old house has been the target of whispers. Everywhere he went, people asked the same thing. Was he leaving? Was the show losing the man who made it feel like home? No one knew for sure. Kevin never stepped forward to give a clear answer. Instead, he started moving in ways that got everyone talking even more. People began to notice he was showing up in new places. He was speaking at big events, standing in front of crowds, talking about building, leadership, and the lessons hidden behind old walls. And it wasn't just for fun. These talks paid him anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000 per appearance. That kind of money meant he was in demand far beyond the TV screen. At the same time, he was reaching into other corners of the building world. He joined conferences with CEOs and contractors, offering advice on how to grow a company or restore a property. He was turning into a voice people trusted on much bigger stages. When you looked at it all together, it seemed clear that Kevin was stepping into something new. He wasn't just the host anymore. He was becoming an expert, a leader, maybe even an icon for the entire industry. The show itself has always been about change. It takes something tired and broken and makes it new again. For 20 years, Kevin stood in the middle of that change. He helped turn this old house into something fresh, something ready for the next generation. He didn't just keep it alive. He helped it grow across platforms, reaching people on TV, online, and on job sites everywhere. But if you really want to understand how he got here, you have to start with the part of his life most people don't know, the part that began in a house that never stopped needing work. Before cameras followed his every move, Kevin O'Connor was just a boy in Maplewood, New Jersey. He was born in 1968 or 1969 into a family that knew what it meant to build things from scratch. His dad was a civil engineer, and their house was a never-ending project. While other kids played catch, Kevin and his brothers carried planks and mixed cement. By the time he was in elementary school, he could read blueprints and measure boards without help. It wasn't always fun, but it planted a seed that would stay with him for life. At 19, everything changed. He was training with the military when he started blacking out over and over. Doctors discovered he had a heart murmur. They couldn't promise it wouldn't get worse. Even stranger, the medical files about his tests and diagnosis disappeared. No one knew where they went. The loss of those records followed him for years, and with the military door closing, he needed a new plan. So he turned to school. In 1986, he graduated from St. Benedict's Preparatory School in Newark. It was a place that demanded hard work. That discipline carried him to the College of the Holy Cross, where he studied history and earned his degree in 1990. While history didn't look like the road to a construction show, it taught him how to explain ideas clearly. He learned how to turn complicated facts into something anyone could understand. After that, he earned his MBA at Boston University. With all that education behind him, he entered the corporate world with confidence. First, he joined Fleet Bank, where he worked in sports finance, helping fund stadiums. Then he moved to Bank of America. Before long, he was a senior vice president handling accounts worth millions. He was making six figures, climbing the ladder, and building a life most people would envy. From the outside, it looked perfect. But inside, Kevin still felt pulled by something he couldn't ignore. In 2003, he and his wife Kathleen bought a Queen Anne Victorian house in Beverly, Massachusetts. It looked charming. But the second they moved in, the problems piled up. Every inch needed fixing. The kitchen, the bathrooms, the bedrooms, nothing was safe. But the wallpaper was the worst part. It had been layered and painted so many times, it was like trying to peel concrete off the walls. They spent hours scraping and tearing, but it barely made a dent. In a last-ditch effort, they emailed the team at this old house, hoping for a tip that might save their sanity. What Kevin didn't know was that the producers were planning a new spin-off, Ask This Old House. His timing couldn't have been better. The email got their attention. But it wasn't just luck that brought him in front of the cameras. Kevin had something no one else did. A real, honest way of asking questions that made the experts open up. When the crew showed up at his Victorian house, he thought it was just a friendly visit. He didn't know it was actually a test. They filmed him as he worked and asked about the wallpaper problem that had driven him crazy. Even when the cameras stopped rolling, he couldn't stop asking questions. At lunch, he followed Tom Silva around, peppering him with ideas and worries. Tom could barely get a bite to eat before Kevin asked something else. The producers were watching everything. They saw that he wasn't just curious, he was natural. He had the same wide-eyed wonder that viewers felt when they tried to fix their own homes. When the filming wrapped up, Kevin felt like he'd just had the best day ever. He was so excited he asked to take a photo with the crew. He told them he'd probably never see them again and wanted a keepsake to remember it. But only 3 weeks later, a call came that would change his life. He was sitting in his Bank of America office when the phone rang. He thought it was a client, but instead, it was the producers of This Old House. They asked if he would like to host the show, not just the new spin-off, but the original series too. Kevin couldn't believe it. He thought it was some prank. Even after he realized they were serious, he still wasn't sure this was real. He told his boss at the bank he might be back in a year, just in case it all fell apart. But the producers knew what they were doing. They had already been through 2 very different and dramatic host changes. Bob Vila, the original host, had made the show famous, but he had also made choices that led to trouble. Bob Vila had started in 1979, when no one thought home renovation could be good TV. He helped build This Old House into something millions watched. But while the show grew, Bob's paycheck stayed small. At the start, he made just $200 per episode. Even after 10 years, he was only making $800 per episode. Over his entire run, he earned less than some contractors made in 1 year. When Bob signed a huge endorsement deal with Rickle Home Centers, it clashed with the show's main sponsor, Home Depot. PBS told him he had to pick one or the other. Bob chose the money. He was fired, and he didn't even hear it from the producers. His agent learned it from a press release. After Bob left, Steve Thomas took over. He was different, quieter, more careful, and he stayed for 14 years. He even won an Emmy in 1998. But in 2003, he vanished from the show. No farewell episode, no big send-off, just a short message about how he wanted to sail and ski. Fans were confused. No one really knew why he left. With all that history, the producers knew their next pick had to be special. Someone honest, someone fresh, someone who could earn the trust of the old crew and the loyal viewers. That's why Kevin got the call. But joining the show wasn't a red carpet welcome. Richard Trethewey, the show's no-nonsense plumbing expert, greeted him with a shovel. Kevin, who'd spent years in bank boardrooms, was now digging ditches for sewer pipes. There were no cameras to make it look nice. This was the real work, the kind that left your hands raw. Richard didn't care that Kevin was the new host. He wanted to see if Kevin could handle the dirt, the sweat, the reality of the job. Every sore muscle was a test. And it wasn't just Richard testing him. Tom Silva threw Kevin straight into sawing and measuring. He didn't ask Kevin to pretend for the camera. He made him do the work for real. Tom believed a host should know what he was talking about, not just read lines. Kevin learned fast that if he wanted to belong, he had to earn it. He spent hours after filming learning how to use every tool the right way. He measured boards over and over until he could do it without thinking. Viewers saw him struggle, mess up, and try again, and that made them root for him. Only a year after he started, something happened that no one saw coming. Kevin was nominated for an Emmy in 2004 for Outstanding Service Show Host. He was shocked. Critics were too. Here was a guy who had never worked in TV, suddenly standing next to veteran hosts. Bob Vila and Steve Thomas had spent years building up their reputations. Kevin did it in a single season. His honesty, curiosity, and willingness to be the learner instead of the expert struck a chord. The Emmy nomination proved he was exactly who the show needed. But something else was changing inside Kevin. He realized he didn't just like talking about construction. He loved doing it. He wanted to pick up the hammer, lay the bricks, and feel the work in his hands. That mindset turned him from just another TV personality into a real partner to the experts. Instead of standing off to the side, he stepped in. When Richard showed how to run pipes, Kevin grabbed a wrench. When Tom explained how to frame a window, Kevin helped nail the boards. This made the show feel different. It wasn't just about teaching, it was about learning together. That approach carried into Ask This Old House, where he also became the host. But that wasn't enough for him. He joined the editorial board of This Old House magazine, helping shape the stories in print. And in the same year he started as host, he helped launch a third series called Inside This Old House. This one showed behind-the-scenes looks at the best projects the show ever tackled. The crazy part was that for a while he was still working at Bank of America. He didn't fully quit his banking job until he knew this new career was solid. He was careful. He wasn't chasing TV fame. He wanted to build something lasting. But Kevin's careful way of doing things didn't mean he was afraid to speak up. In fact, one day he did something that shocked almost everyone. Kevin also knew the way people watch TV was changing fast. When Bob Vila was hosting, they'd film long scenes that lasted 10 or even 12 minutes without a single cut. But modern viewers liked quicker edits. Kevin adapted. He made the segments shorter and tighter, but never shallow. He kept asking deep questions, so even if the scenes were faster, the lessons were still clear. He also helped the show expand into new places. In 2019, he started Clear Story, a podcast about how things work in homes. The show became a big hit and ranked among the top 1% of podcasts. In 2021, he helped This Old House partner with Roku, so people could watch every episode for free. All 1,500 episodes went online, plus a channel that streamed them non-stop. And he co-founded This Old Toolbox, a tool rental service to help viewers actually do the projects they learned about. Kevin's way of handling all these changes, keeping the old spirit but welcoming new ideas, helped the show survive when others faded away. It also helped him build a strong financial future. People were curious how much Kevin actually earned. While Bob Vila made about $200 per episode in the early days, Kevin was earning around $10,000 per episode. With over 380 episodes under his belt, that meant millions just from hosting. And he didn't stop there. His speaking gigs paid him up to $50,000 each. He spoke at big trade shows, taught companies about the future of building, and inspired thousands of people. He also used his old banking skills to invest. He had stocks worth over $5 million and earned around $1.5 million a year from them. He still lived in a Queen Anne Victorian house, just like the one that first got him on TV. That house wasn't a trophy. It was proof that he still believed in old homes, careful work, and doing things the right way. And now, after so many years, fans kept asking the same question: is Kevin O'Connor leaving This Old House? Here's the answer. Kevin never planned to leave the show because he was tired or bored. The rumors started because people saw him doing more speaking events, launching a podcast, and making investments. Some assumed he was getting ready to walk away. But Kevin has said that while he's excited about growing his influence and trying new things, he doesn't see those projects as replacements for the show. They're expansions. He explained that This Old House is still where his heart is. He still loves standing in old kitchens, asking why the joists were done that way. He still loves learning something new in every episode. And he still believes the show has more stories to tell. The reason he started doing more projects wasn't to get out of hosting. It was to help more people understand that good building matters. So while he's busier than ever, Kevin isn't quitting. He's just adding more ways to teach and inspire. He has built something so strong that he doesn't have to choose between TV and the rest of his work. And that's why, even after 20 years, Kevin O'Connor isn't walking away. He's still there, standing in the sawdust, ready to ask the next question. Kevin O'Connor has shown that you don't have to pick fame over truth. You can stand by your values, teach people what matters, and still build a life you love. His story isn't ending. It's growing, one project at a time. During an interview, a reporter asked him what he thought about all the new DIY shows popping up on cable channels. Kevin didn't hold back. He called most of them crap. He said they were worthless and couldn't hold his interest for even a second. That one word, crap, spread everywhere. It was like lighting a match in a dry forest. Fans were surprised and other TV hosts were furious. Instead of taking it back, Kevin doubled down. He said those shows were fake. They made people think you could redo a whole house in a weekend with a tiny budget. And when people tried to copy that at home, they failed, not because they weren't smart, but because the shows were lying. He said it wasn't right to trick viewers. That was when people realized Kevin wasn't just a host reading scripts. He really cared about the truth and about helping people do things the right way. His comments started what he called a philosophy war. On one side were the fast, flashy shows that cared more about entertainment than real skills. On the other was This Old House, where Kevin believed the main purpose was to teach, not just entertain. The fight got louder when HGTV stars fired back. They said Kevin didn't understand their audience and that people liked seeing quick makeovers. But Kevin wouldn't budge. He said if something looked too easy, it probably wasn't real. Even when everyone was arguing, there was one thing Kevin never brought up: Bob Vila. Bob had been the first host of This Old House, and he left in 1989 after a huge fight over endorsements. He had signed deals worth $500,000 with other companies, and PBS told him to pick a side. He chose the money, and that was the end. But Kevin never said a word about it. For over 20 years, he never mentioned Bob Vila in public. No praise, no blame. Some people thought that was smart because talking about it would just stir up old problems. Kevin always picked his battles carefully. But when it came to respecting old builders, Kevin never stayed quiet. He hated it when people mocked the way houses were built 100 years ago. He said those builders were smart. They worked with what they had. If there was no fiberglass insulation, they did the best they could with coal and plaster. Kevin also didn't agree with people who said big houses were always bad. He argued that size didn't mean waste. A well-built big house could use less energy than a poorly built small one. He got into arguments over that, but he didn't care. He said judging without understanding was just lazy. All these strong opinions had a purpose. Kevin wanted This Old House to stay different. He wanted it to feel real. He didn't want it to turn into another quick flip show. And his refusal to mention Bob Vila was also part of that. He wasn't going to drag the show's past into the present. Instead, he focused on moving forward. That focus was tested again when Norm Abram retired in 2022. Norm had been there since the first episode. For 43 years, he was the steady, calm carpenter everyone trusted. When Norm left, it felt like losing part of the show's heart. But Kevin didn't panic. He planned the transition carefully. He introduced new experts, but he kept Norm's spirit alive. He did the same thing when Roger Cook had to step back because of his health. Roger had been with the show nearly as long as Norm. Kevin brought in Jen Nawada slowly so fans wouldn't feel like everything was changing overnight.